successful and engaging online classes don't happen by accident. And this is what we want to focus on this whole time, is being very intentional about engagement and how to make your class successful through course design. And that course design is going to look different because we are online. And so we have to prepare for that, and we have to take some time to think about what that will mean. And that brings me to a second point that I think is pretty important, which is that what we did in the spring wasn't exactly online learning. It was really emergency remote instruction. And we did our level best, and I'm so proud of all of you that taught in the spring. I know it was not easy, but what we did was not designed to be online from the beginning. It was a quick pivot to an online modality, but not really online learning. Because online learning is designed from end to beginning specifically for online spaces, taking advantage of all the opportunities of online spaces, and also recognizing the limitations of those online spaces and the way those impact student learning. Online learning is collaborative, constructivist, and community building. We're going to talk a lot more about all of these things, and about how online learning can lower barriers and increase access. But sometimes when we design for face-to-face classes, or when we build a syllabus for a face-to-face class, it's very likely that we've decided not to be sort of collaborative and constructivist, but to see our students as separate and individual, and that can sometimes not work very well in an online space where really online learning is meant to be this constructivist project, where we all work together to build knowledge. And then online learning tries to lower barriers and increase access. And a lot of the emergency remote instruction that we did this summer, unfortunately, created barriers to access to education, because our students didn't have the bandwidth that they needed to be on Zoom all the time, or because we didn't have the access to the tools we needed, and that created barriers. And so we want to make sure that as we're working these next couple days, we really are thinking intentionally about what online learning looks like and how it maybe is different than what we did in the past, to give our students the very best chance for success. We're going to start today by talking about goals, and then we're going to use this idea of backward design, working backward toward daily classes. If you've ever inherited a syllabus, for example, you may have just seen the course outline and the schedule as if that was the first thing that was created. But in fact, in good online course design, that really should be the last thing, right? Those daily course things. What we should start with is what we want our students to know or do or be when they finish this online class, or later, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. What do we really want? In an online environment, we have to pare down. Having 47 goals for our students is admirable, but unlikely to happen. And so we really just want to think critically about exactly what we need our students to know or be or do when they finish this class. And then working backward from there, say, okay, these are the 3 things that I definitely need my students to know or be or do, skills they might have or dispositions, whatever. How are they going to show me that they've met those high expectations that I have for them? That is, what assignments or assessments are we going to do? And assignments and assessments, we're going to talk about tomorrow. And so that, and how to give feedback on those assignments and assessments. And then on the 3rd day, we're going to talk about how to build in daily class practices, how to design your lectures for an online environment, how to do activities, and how to provide daily support that's going to help your students work toward those big goals that you have for them. So while they may engage the course from daily support to your goals, you're engaging the students by starting with what you want them to know or be or do, and designing everything intentionally backward from there, right? And this can be very frustrating sometimes because we have all these great readings or assignments that we just love, but they're not going to meet those goals. In that case, we're going to have to talk about sort of letting some of those go so that we are making sure that our students aren't overwhelmed and that we ourselves aren't overwhelmed in this online modality. So today we're really going to focus on goals that we have for ourselves, goals that we have for our students, and then we're going to begin to work on how we can create assignments that show that our students have met those high goals that we have for them, and then how we can intentionally embed readings, videos, discussion boards, right? All these kinds of tools that we might have used haphazardly in the spring, how we can intentionally use those to help our students work toward our course goals. And then how do we make sure that our students feeling challenged, supported, and encouraged to engage all the way through the course design, or all the way through our courses this fall, because that is going to be different for them too. Don't forget, a lot of our students, they pivoted when we pivoted, right? And they had a chance last semester to meet you and each other in person before we had to go online to emergency remote instruction. So we are then going to talk a lot today. Mary's up next in just a couple minutes to talk about making your goals transparent to students and helping them see where they're headed. And then Warren's going to talk about setting goals for ourselves and becoming comfortable with and our own teaching and being reasonable about what can be accomplished in this fall semester so that we're not overwhelming ourselves, so that we don't overwhelm our students.
So as Jessica said, I'm going to be focusing on the idea of goal setting, and that first part that we want to think about, where do we want our students to end up in our course? So I'm going to admit from the start, I'm a junkie on Paula Hanstedt's Creating Wicked Students. It's a book that I found really transformative for my teaching. I like this quote: "Content is crucial, but as a means to an end rather than as an end itself." As Jessica described, backwards course design centers our goals for the course. The goals-based approach really helps our students understand that education is about more than memorizing content. The question we need to ask ourselves when developing our courses really is, what do we want our students to do with the information that they learn in our classes? So in this short section, we're going to think about the why students want or need to learn the content from your course, how you can shift their focus from learning content to using it, why it's important to be transparent about your goals, your assignments, your expectations, and how we can help students gain some authority in our classes. So let's start with the why. Flower Darby stated in Small Teaching Online that transparency is needed to prevent students from thinking that our assignments are busy work. For example, vocabulary is hugely important in your language classes. But if you just give a list of words and you tell students to memorize them with no context, they'll do so with no passion. But if you explain that the list this week is going to provide them the vocabulary they need to maybe have a conversation about a cool French movie, they're going to be excited to know those words so they can be part of the next discussion. So let's talk about the how now. Learning is not just about receiving information. It's about using it. Students learn more and retain better when they've had the opportunity to apply what they've learned. We'll discuss assignments in detail tomorrow, but your take home from today should be that your goals need to be aligned with your assignments to help students attain those goals. What we really want is for you to create some really wicked, inspiring goals, trusting that your students can attain them because you have a well-structured course with detailed assignments that are aligned and the support that you need for them to be successful. So Zoll's diagram of the learning cycle, and this picture was taken from the Reading and Creating Wicked Students, highlights the importance of moving from the early phases of learning to its application. So in this example, the concrete experience is the material you presented, the lecture, the reading, or however else they're going to get content from you. Then they reflect on this information by rereading, discussing with colleagues, doing some small problem sets on the basics. But the real learning happens below the transformation line. This is when the students connect it to prior learning, to their own lives, to the issues occurring in the world around them. This is when the knowledge becomes useful and significant to them. So this is when they become engaged. This is when they're like, yes, I love this course, right? Okay. Importantly, we need to acknowledge that faculty are weird. We love our content so much that we keep doing it. We're still here. We're professors. We love this stuff. But our students maybe aren't quite there yet, all right? Our students may not have a natural passion for our content. Got to be honest with ourselves. Most of them are probably not majoring in our field, at least in some of our classes, or not going to go on and become researchers in this field. So we need to make it transparent to them why it is interesting or relevant to their lives. We can't just assume that if we tell them something cool, like the cool spectroscopic features of caffeine, that that's going to be enough for them to care, right? They're just like, whatever, I like coffee. But our goals need to be transparent, and we can help them see why this is important, right? And why they want to learn what we are teaching, and get them excited about how they can use this information. It becomes ever more important for us when we're online, because we're going to lack those informal conversations that we had before and after class, when students come in and they're like, oh, the reading was excited because, and you talk about it and you make those connections, or after they stay after and say, oh, it was so exciting when we talked about this, I'd like to know more about that. So we really have to be more intentional when we attend to making the why of our course transparent to our students. Okay, so I want to talk about this idea of wicked goals. Again, really inspiring goals. The ultimate goal should be, what do you want your students to do with the content and skills that you teach? Okay, so that's going to necessarily incorporate some lower order learning. So they're going to learn those skills, they're going to learn that vocabulary, whatever it is. And it's fine that that's where they start, but you want to incorporate the why. You want to have a reason for them to get somewhere. So we start with that content, and that's the basic stuff. That reflection is to practice that new knowledge, whatever you've taught them, ways for them to practice and get more comfortable with it. Then you have them apply it, right? They integrate that into prior knowledge or prior skills or something interesting. And then ultimately, authority, what we really want is for them to move into new areas and to apply that in places where it's uncertain, right? Where the answer maybe isn't as obvious, because that's when they're going to care and that's when they're going to retain. So we can use Bloom's taxonomy as a way to talk about this. Student engagement and deep learning occur when students become part of knowledge making. Your goals need to move beyond them remembering details and move toward those higher order skills at the top of this pyramid. So be sure that when you look at your goals, they include opportunities for students to analyze, evaluate, and create. It's these areas up here where students gain that authority, where they become so invested in the material that they want to solve something bigger. And that is important too, because it tells them that you believe they can, right? And that's really important when we talk about inclusive pedagogy. We want students to know that you believe in them and that you think they can do these higher order things. Because once you tell them you believe in them, they're going to believe in themselves. Or at least the chances are better for that. Okay, so overall, what do we get with these transparent goals? And where do we want to go? You have your content, and maybe that's one of your goals, that my students will learn this basic content, the background necessary for them to do more with my class. Then, what do you want them to do with that content? That's the what. So maybe right from the beginning, even as you're only doing basic skills, you're telling them, we're going to use all of this later in the course at this point. Once we gain these skills, we're going to be able to do this really cool thing. The how is the assignments and activities that you prepare to help them achieve your goal, right? This is where we have that scaffolding piece where you say, okay, we've learned these skills, let's apply them in this way. And now let's add to that a little bit more and apply them in this way. And you can show them how that's going to get them to the big picture, the thing that you want. The why is your transparency, right? You want to tell them the why. You may never have needed the why in your subject. You were just like, wow, that reading is amazing. I love it. Everything about it rocks my world. That's not all of our students. So we need to help them understand why that reading was important, why it matters, why it's relevant. So explain to them that secret. Give them the reason you want them to learn. That'll get them the buy-in. That'll get them enthusiastic. Even if ultimately I teach general chemistry, some of it at the beginning is just some tools. They're pretty dry. But if I can keep telling them, once we gain these skills, then we get to go look at this. And I can keep reminding them of that this is where we're headed. And that keeps them on task. And then finally, the ultimate goal is to create independent thinkers capable of creating new knowledge and solving wicked problems. Help them know that's your goal, that you want them to move beyond, I know some content, that you want them to apply some content, right? And so help them see that that's the ultimate goal and everything else is leading to that. And then when they do that thing that maybe at the beginning they didn't think they could, that's a huge win because they've gained confidence that they can do something difficult, but they've also become fully invested in what you were teaching. That's going to be exciting for them and for you.